The cancellation of the Imola GP translated as bad news for Verstappen more than it did for his teammate Perez. But it seems like the story won't end here. The F1 caravan is now headed to one of Perez's favourite tracks, Monaco. And if we're to judge by the history of 2022, it seems like the Mexican won't stop at anything to make sure that he'll be the second consecutive winner of this GP. To top that off, teams like Mercedes are bringing massive upgrades that will bolster their chances to be more competitive. So all in all, Verstappen's F1 Championship quest will soon receive a massive hit from both his teammate and Mercedes. But before we dive deeper into Monaco, let's see how the Imola GP has affected Verstappen and the quest for the third consecutive championship. This was one of Verstappen's favourite races, as he went on to win it in 2021 by starting third and finishing first, while in 2022 it was mostly dominated by him and Perez as the duo cruised to a 1-2 victory. However, due to the horrible weather and the victims in the Imola region, it was only right for the F1 caravan not to race here and celebrate the event, as the whole region is mourning what seems to be one of the worst periods for the country. But life goes on, and so does the F1 carousel, as we're now headed into Monaco, the race that brought so much controversy last year that we couldn't wrap it in one video. Long story short, Perez's spin in Q3's final minutes was reportedly an intentional one, as he wanted to start ahead of his teammate Verstappen to have an advantage over his teammate in the race. This is an event that is mostly decided by the starting positions of the drivers, and if a driver starts on the front row, then it's most likely that if everything goes well in the pit stop and reliability of the car, then he'll end there as well. While Verstappen didn't let this move by Perez slide under the rug, and he did what he had to do in Brazil, which was not obey team orders and slam down his teammate in the fight for P2 with Leclerc, 2023 is a different season, and it's one in which we're seeing a much more competitive version of Perez. The Mexican driver won 2 races this year, both of them at street venues, and this is something that he's been doing so well in his career. To top that off, we're headed into one of his favourite tracks in Formula 1, the Monaco GP, and it's safe to assume that he'll be the one leading the Austrian team into victory now that he's found more pace and is more comfortable with the car. Even though a win in Monaco won't guarantee us an interesting season ahead, especially not because tracks like this are expected to be dominated by Perez, who seems to put on different clothing whenever F1 goes to street circuits, it's definitely something that we're looking forward to. But is the Imola cancellation that bad for Verstappen? Well, according to Peter Windsor, this is definitely something that can turn back and bite the 2-time world champion in the back if at the end of the season he loses the championship to Perez by a small margin. When talking about this matter, the commentator said, "What will Max be thinking? One less race for me to win? Absolutely no doubt that was more of a Max circuit than a Checo circuit, so that's more of a loss for Verstappen." If these two guys are going to be very close on points getting towards the end of the year, which is a big if of course, then Imola will be a race that Max will rue the absence of. But can Perez show that he is a competitive driver at Red Bull? And will he be able to prove that he is the one that can take the lead in the remainder of the season? Showing that even if though you're a 2-time world champion, things can change if you have the willpower. After his disappointing statement in Miami, where he said that he couldn't do what Max was doing with the car, simply because he wasn't confident in the RB19 to that extent, Perez is now looking to bank huge on the upcoming GP. And while the battle has been respectful between him and Verstappen so far, Johnny Herbert feels like the veteran needs to do something in order to change that. You don't get to win championships by just respecting your teammate and doing everything out of respect. And according to Herbert, even if Perez wins the championship for the sake of him being sacked out of the team, it's the only right way to do it, as he went on to say, "If it's your only shot, you'll do anything to get that trophy on your mantelpiece. If you get thrown out at the end of that season, that trophy is on the mantelpiece." We know Max has got that mentality, and Hamilton has that mentality, and all the other drivers in the past who have won world championships. Now, it's seeing if Sergio wants to do the same thing. It's a risk that you may lose that seat, the best seat in Formula 1 at the present time, but to win a world championship, I'd go for it. It's true that a huge question mark is flying over Perez's head in terms of whether or not he'll be able to challenge his teammate on a more traditional circuit. But with Mercedes bringing a lot of upgrades to Monaco, a track that has a high downforce requirement on the cars, these two might find a competition outside of their own garages for the first time this season. Mercedes is looking to cut the gap to Red Bull by 0.3 per second. And with Ferrari showing that they can match the one-lap pace of the RB19, and it's only a matter of time before they figure out the race pace, things aren't looking great for Verstappen, who is on his quest to win the third championship in his career. To make things worse for him, Horner has spoken about the team's preferences, and while it's widely believed that Verstappen is the favourite and the #1 driver on the team, Horner has fiercely denied all of these allegations. The Briton said that there are no #1 and #2 drivers in the team, and whoever delivers better results is the one that will be considered the better driver and will be prioritised down the road as all things stand at Red Bull. Statistically speaking, this shouldn't scare Verstappen because he's the one that's been able to get the better of his teammate in these 5 circuits so far in 2023, with the Dutchman having a solid 3-2 lead over his teammate. But as we've been able to witness, things can change very quickly, and one DNF can change everything on the table. Therefore, will Horner's statement and reminder that no driver is bigger than Red Bull scare Verstappen and bring some common sense into him? When talking about this matter, the team's principal said, "I think the most important thing across the whole variance of drivers that we've had over the years that I've seen is just to be upfront and try and deal things in an open manner, above the table, and have the difficult conversations upfront of what's expected, that they're not just driving for themselves. They're driving in a set of Red Bull overalls. They're representing all the hopes of the 1,500 people within our team and companies that have all the partners, the shareholders. Of course, you end up sometimes with conflict between your drivers, but I think the most important thing as a team is to play with a straight bat, to treat them equally. We don't have a #1 driver. Our #1 driver is whoever is ahead on the circuit, and you earn that by what you do on the circuit, not through a contract. And that's the way we've always operated." Well, it seems like Verstappen's camp will be even further dissatisfied with Perez, and while it was known that the Dutchman has already reportedly requested another teammate due to the competitiveness of Perez, statements like this from Horner show one thing: show that you're the better driver on the track, not through requests. Not that Verstappen will have too big of a problem to handle, but nonetheless, it's definitely something that can put a lot of pressure on him to perform better and prove that he is a 2-time world champion for a reason amid all of the critiques that are coming towards him. So with this in mind, what do you think about the current situation at Red Bull? Do you think that an intra-team battle, something that happened in 2016 at Mercedes, is exactly the future that is awaiting the Austrian team? Or do you think that Verstappen will squash all of these talks and go on to win his 3rd consecutive championship without any bigger hurdles in his way? Let us know in the comments down below.